ride with the mob. Voila, you and me, your job, work is the name, bullet in the chain, for the watch, play Jane, bikini chain, my superior, man's linga feeder, village in Liberia, TMZ taking pictures, calling me hysteria, I'ma see me all beat, not tearing up, I was out killing niggas, and you do that track, I ain't in all the picnics when you reach your life, I'm from the skill work, selling this at night, I was only 8 years old, watching nigga at night, of course I was in that bathroom bucket, it was good, hopefully don't cut him, suicidal thoughts brought to me with no advisory, these bitches dummy selling peace, mad ivory, grandma had the author running down his bag, popping pills like weapons in society, I'm a fucking bitch, but I am me, I said easy at your hurt, and don't keep eyeing me, I with the mom, voila, you and me, the job, the name, the bullet in the chain, on the watch,
Go back to the original Fast and the Furious days and you'll see people slapping on wings, pretty much putting crazy decals everywhere they possibly could, and putting on more polyurethane bumpers than the entire cast of Cars the movie, which by the way has quite a cult following and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Movies just didn't age well, specifically the original Fast and the Furious, but the movie speaks for itself to like the innermost enthusiast within all of us, and that is we must have a fast car. To do what? I'm not really sure, okay? I don't know, maybe to race. I'm Alex at Define Instagram, and today we're gonna be talking about a hobby that 110% seemed to be insanely more popular back in the day, and nowadays seems to be all but distant and replaced by like the History Channel reality TV shows, if that even makes sense. You could not tell 12-year-old me that the History Channel was gonna have reality TV shows. That's just not a thing. But today we're talking about what happened to street racing. Speaking of street racing, in all honesty, just don't do it, because there's like a million different places you can actually drive your car like a loony, and there's tons of driving schools and things that you should focus on instead. And I mean, this is a disclaimer, but it's also just like general common sense, at least to somebody like me. No one wants to get a midnight phone call of you getting into an accident, or even worse, ruining someone else's life that was simply around while you were driving uncontrollably. I know at night it seems like nobody's around, but typically there are. There's always somebody around, and a lot of times you hear about a lot of accidents that have to do with other people because of somebody driving fast. So with that out of the way, don't forget that if you're looking to build your car for some of the speed legitness, okay, and need some line-ass wheels and good tires, be sure to check out fitmentindustries.com and drop a comment on what you'd like to see next in the What Happened series, or if you have some ideas for So You Want, we might just be bringing that back in maybe January or February. It's already January. We'll see you next year. That joke doesn't work anymore. Street racing is something that began the moment 2 production vehicles made it off the lot, and inherently never really stopped. You could actually trace this all the way back to the early 1900s, and in all honesty, since cars have been made, people have been using them to either compete against each other, run away from each other, or some sort of selfish intent. In all honesty, cars are just a selfish platform to do more of whatever it is that we want to do. People swapped in ambulance engines for more power to run away from cops back in the 30s and 40s. This was a real thing. I mean, what do you expect? But you had moonshine runners that were running the midnight roads with no headlights on and modified chassis to handle the weight. That's a whole story that had to do with air suspension and the birth of NASCAR. You also had people learning how to actually make their car like 007 up in here, and it was absolutely awesome. You have people racing against each other, and it was a little bit like a mating ritual, except it was predominantly between people that I don't think ever wanted a long-term relationship. But either way, street racing, among any other type of competition-style driving, has always been around the automotive industry. But as production cars began to get faster and more dangerous, it was only a matter of time until groups, associations, companies, and the police decided that they're gonna have a little love circle, because there's a lot of going on, and if they didn't get it under control, everything was gonna implode. And I'm really trying to understand that this was an insanely fast-growing hobby, and it was actually ignited even more so after World War II, when everybody was coming back and looking for a little bit of the American dream and a little bit of more excitement in their life. Not like driving a car really fast. You had the spawn of NASCAR, which really was one of the first association-related large-scale automotive events in the United States. Hell yeah, brother, okay? You had the NHRA take on the drag racing crowd to find people a place to fly by the seat of their pants safely, with the only potential injury being that to themselves and potentially the other competitor that was racing right down the line with you. You had events overseas where the major manufacturers began to really step it up, as well with the introduction of professional professional racing, such things like Formula One. By the way, back in the day, was insanely dangerous, okay? It was like the scariest thing in the world. But you also had things like Baja runs, World Rally Championships, and Le Mans. You had 24 hours, you had this, you had that. You had so many different types of racing that if you were an automotive enthusiast, you had something to watch. And if you lived in the 60s and 80s, professional automotive racing was a massive pastime for the world. But no matter what organization, whether it was small or large, it was enough to satiate some people, and there were other people that still wanted more. You see, through the evolution of cars in the professional motorsport era, there was still a group of people that preferred to do it on a public road. So much so that it wasn't inherently just a random sporadic group of people, but there was a very collective organization of individuals in local areas that would get together and illegally street race. Now, illegal street race would start to be birthed primarily in the early 70s, it'd leave for a bit in the early 80s, and then come back swinging in the mid 80s and into the 90s until it reached its peak likely in the late 90s to early 2000s. You have to remember that the EPA in the 70s and into the early 80s really curbed that down because of the fact that you couldn't actually street race a lot of your vehicles because of the price of gas and the fact that everything was inherently very slow. It only came back into the fray once a lot of those emissions started to lift, speed limits were raised, and a lot of people started to realize you could still have fun with cars. Street racing, by the way, is something insurance agencies also look at. If you're in the following states, congratulations, you're in a state with the most street racers per capita. I didn't even know that this was a fact. It's interesting nonetheless because the states are not what you would expect. Number 10 comes in with Virginia, not sure who lives there. Tennessee, number 9 because of the tail of the dragon. 8 is Wisconsin. 7 is Iowa. 6 is Arkansas. 5 is Hawaii, not entirely sure why. 4 is Oregon. 3 is Wyoming. 2 is Idaho. And the number 1 state is North Dakota with 85% more street racing violations than average. There's 41.43 drivers with a racing violation per 100,000 drivers in North Dakota. Why? What's even there? Mountains, skiing. But racing and high adrenaline has been something that's been a lot of people's blood for a long time. In fact, street racing and just cars as in general to some people is more than a hobby, it's a passion. And in 1971, for example, there's somebody by the name of Brock Yates Sr. started something you may know as the CannonBall Run, which was a 2,800-mile street race, which was predominantly illegal. Stuff like this started popping up in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s. And now we get back over into the favorite movie that everybody knows and loves, The Fast and the Furious. Now, Fast and the Furious is no slouch to kicking that energy and nickel to the next set of generational enthusiasts with a bald, muscly man driving an RX-7 for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why Vin Diesel was driving an RX-7 in the beginning of the film because nothing else after that aligns, but whatever. People once again revitalize that want and need to drive fast. As the activity surged back up, lots of new groups, organizations, and associations were quick to quiet, trying quell the issue. We're gonna fix this, okay? The spark created the growth of autocross groups, smaller drag associations, and additional road courses that could be used at a fraction of the cost. But for some reason or not, it still didn't seem to fill the void of those that ran cash, no prep races on the tollways of Houston or on the beltways of Texas, because that was a thing. And in fact, I even remember going back early in the early 2010s to late 2000s, if you can even put me back that long ago. Maybe you look like, maybe you thought I was a baby, I was not, and going to Texas for the Texas 2K. But in the past, street racing was relatively well known. It was big, it was dangerous, and now it's all but gone, only to be taken place by maybe 1 or 2 major events. So what exactly happened to street racing? Did the cops finally shut it down, or did people get bored? Did everyone's project car run out of money or patience? Well, it's really none of the above. Street racing has been in a really weird spot that hadn't really been talked about for quite a while. And something that's pretty interesting though is the most recent resurgence of illegal street racing, which was caused none other than the pandemic's forced hand for individuals to stay home. Because people were forced to stay home, more illegal street racing occurred. And you can actually see the spike in 2020 and a lot of news stations and articles talking about accidents and injuries and deaths and fatalities because of illegal street racing in the 2020. Because of this, more enthusiasts had time to finish the car in their garage with less sanctioned events happening around the country in both parking lots and at tracks. Places like Road America, BIR, Road Atlanta, and a lot of those places couldn't actually host anything, which started to suck people's, hobby even more. What unfolded was nearly 5 times the reporting of street racing incidents in places like New York City. New laws for violations that could be tied to street racing meant you'd go to jail for 3 to 5 years and you'd have your vehicle completely forfeited, unable to ever buy it back. The spike caused by being forced to stay inside may have an influence on some people of maybe the prices that people like you and people like me paid for cars in 2020. And it's really interesting to kind of hear that because otherwise outside of 2020, there really wasn't a whole lot of talk about street racing at all. You had the Texas 2K, which which was predominantly a sanctioned event at different tracks or oval tracks around the Houston area. Nowadays, street racing is still prominent in certain areas, but it's much quieter, and rightfully so. And places like the Texas 2K absolutely do not condone the activities that happen on the Beltway at night. Make no mistake, cars have always been dangerous, but when there's cars nowadays that you can buy with a red key that lift the front wheels from the dealership without any driving knowledge or having any experience driving a high horsepower car, that can be kind of nuts. And it's always been like that a little bit, but really it's starting to be insane. Put that amount of power in a budget-friendly car and you have even more people that lack the greatest modification of all, which just so happens to be driver's mod. That's just one of those things that a lot of people have a tendency to think they have until they don't. These accidents that have been reported were by those that likely had no idea the gravity of what they were doing. And you can see it in when they're convicted. There's been TikToks and YouTube videos of people going to jail because they were illegally street racing and hit somebody, and that's why it just shouldn't be a thing. But like I said, illegal street racing isn't something that really should be glorified, because when you do mess it up, you could seriously injure someone else. That's really the big thing. You could hurt or damage somebody else, okay? You wanna do a burnout, go do it where the only person you can hurt is yourself, maybe in a country back road or something like that. Then shake it off when you oversteer into a ditch or then end up calling your dad. But if you can, try to keep it to places where there's like staff and safety and ambulances and stuff like that. Don't do it around people. Street racing has started to learn this. Most of its illegally sanctioned events here have made their way to private property. I remember going to the Texas 2K, and one of the old grudge match racing was actually done on an airfield in an abandoned warehouse versus on the Beltway. It's just a weird thing that people are starting to do. Now, most street racing can still be tracked and logged and practically emailed to you as you're conducting it too, because of how good enforcement has become about monitoring high-risk areas. And it's only a matter of time before the United States of America decides to start putting cameras on every highway and starts just mailing you tickets when you're speeding, because that sucks, but it's probably gonna happen. Now, don't call me Buzz Killington. I know, it's not like the most exciting thing, because I love racing just as much as the next guy, and I spend quite a bit of time and money buying stuff so my car can perform like a beaut around Road America. P.S. Thank you, Michelin, for the driver's mod, because it helps me, all right? But outside of a small poll, street racing just isn't worth doing, and people doing weird night hobbies these days, and I don't know, Pokemon Go is coming back. You got people walking around outside in the metaverse, and you don't want them, they got an Oculus on, you can't see them. It's just, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze, all right? I just don't know if it is. I don't think it is, but find a local autocross group, find a local nearby track or event organizer that allows you to use and abuse the old shit box with a helmet on, because at the end of the day, it's not like we're driving around a bajillion-dollar car. It's mostly like a Mazda Speed 6 that's just like 2 miles away from blowing up. And if one doesn't exist, then make one yourself. And when you do jump into the sport and you're looking to modify the car with some lightweight wheels and sticky tires, just be sure to snag them from fitmentindustries.com. Let us know what your thoughts are on the old street racing, and of course, drop a comment below on what you'd like to see us talk about next. If you're looking for wheels, tires, and suspension, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. I'm Alex from Fitment Industries, and we will see you later. Peace.